relationships aren't cheerleaders. Everyone loves cheerleaders. They look great in a short skirt, but they're of no fucking use to anybody. Challengers, those are the ones. When you turn around and you're in a great room and you say, hey, I want to look at doing this. And the person opposite you goes, is that it? You know, really? You know, that's where you're pulling the ceiling and you go, actually, no, you know, how far could I take this? The moon, you know, let's go. That's what you need. You need to be in the right room where people don't laugh at your goals and aspirations. They're laughing at how low you're keeping them and then challenge you to push more. So relationships are everything.
The ROI of relationships. Return on investment, a way to measure what you get back from the work you put in. A metric deemed to establish the success of your business. But what if there's an investment you can't measure? One that, in actual fact, is the most important investment you will ever make. Until now, you've overlooked it or you simply ignored it as a way to elevate your business to the next level. To help you on your gifted path, your next set of remarkable masters are waiting. One of the most sought-after coaches and speakers in the world who makes the impossible possible. And one of the most influential connectors in the world who has generated hundreds of millions of dollars for others, who will all help you answer the question, how do I understand the ROI of relationships?
Everybody, welcome to this next installment of The Gifted Show. The theme today is...
Oh, this would be good.
The ROI of relationships. You like that? Come on.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I wondered what you were going to scratch up. So, okay, we'll keep that one.
Don't have to edit later. We're good. All right. So our two guests, I don't usually do intros. I like doing more origin story, especially related to how we all know each other and that kind of thing. And then I want to go a bit into each of your backgrounds that I don't know. I feel like I know a bit of it, but I really want to figure it out. And I'll like Steve, I think I may have given you this name. I don't know. I doubt it, but the real life Wizard of Oz, like it's almost like Make-A-Wish Foundation for super wealthy people. Like if someone has a shit ton of money and they want bucket list, ridiculous experiences, they've come to you for decades. And I met you through Joe. Welcome, Joe Polish from Genius Network. I want to lay the foundation for the backstory, and I don't know how much Joe even remembers. Like Joe, I have publicly said 100 times, Joe has changed my life just by knowing him. But I want to actually acknowledge what happened. So in 2004, I was working at a company called Strategic Coach, which run by one of the smartest people on the planet, Dan Sullivan. And I was running the marketing at the company. And one day Dan said, hey, we're going to do this project where we're going to film client stories on camera. And I want you to project manage. And we have this client, his name is Joe, who's going to kind of help out and interview other clients on camera. This is your project. So that's how Joe and I originally met. And at the time, Joe's like, hey, you like this marketing shit. You're awesome. There's this event happening in Arizona, in Scottsdale, where I live in the area. And it's run by this guy named Dan Kennedy. And if you can get yourself to Arizona, I'll have you come as my guest. And I forgot the name, like Renegade Millionaire. I can't remember what the name. There's like 2,000 people at this event. And I put on my sales cap and sold the company why it was so important for me to go to Arizona. And they said, yeah, well, we'll cover the trip, and went down. And I was very green in the marketing space, especially direct response, which is whoever. And this was like the Hall of Fame who's who of internet marketing in 2004. And I just didn't know anybody. I only knew Joe. So I was his guest the whole time. He was bringing me to all these fun lunches and dinners with probably some of the most important people at the time. And it changed my life because I got to discover this world of direct response. And like at that event, you introduced me to Joe Sugarman as an example, and other people like him. and it blew my mind. And it was the thing that made me realize, you know what, this is my thing. Like, I really want to figure this out. I left strategic coach was my last ever job. I left there in 2005. And when I left, I said, I feel like I was cheating. People pay a lot of money to be in this room as clients, and I'm being paid as an employee to be in this room. So I thought I need to make it back to them. And my dream back then was I want to be the first person to leave as a team member and come back as a client. And I did that in 2011. And then when I was there, they were saying, hey, there's this Genius Network thing that Joe runs. And I looked into it. And at the time I was in real estate, and it scared the crap out of me. And, 25,000 a year, holy shit, all these awesome people. And I decided I had enough courage to say, I'm going to make an investment in myself. I went to the first event, which was August 2012. And back then, Archangel, the current company, was a dream. I said, like 5 years from now, I'm going to launch this thing. And just to make my imposter syndrome 10 times worse, you guys sat me at like the nerd table. So it was, and I think I'm smart, but I was sitting with Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil and Naveen Jain. That was my freaking table. and little old me. And I thought, oh shit. But that experience and being around all the people you gather and it was the next Hall of Fame room. So I got to meet everyone who at the time I would consider a hero, like Tim Ferriss and Dean Jackson and Brendan Burchard and everybody who was there. And on my flight home, I said, I'm not waiting 5 years. I have to do this thing now. And I started on my flight. I had my journal brainstorming my Archangel launch plan. And we launched 2 years later. And at my very first mastermind in LA, which was May 2014, Steve was there. And Steve's been a supporter of this mission literally since the beginning. And I met Steve through Joe. So the idea is, I think people call me now a connector, an amazing connector. And it's like, yeah, I bow down to both of you. You guys are if there's such a thing as a super connector, you can add an extra word super at the front. So super connectors are the two of you. So I'm so thrilled to be having this conversation, because I'm always asked from people, what are like the marketing secrets of building a business, and what's the next funnel, and and I say, yeah, the biggest secret is build relationships. And they look at me all crooked. So I want to dive deep on this topic. And also I want to get to know a bit of how each of you are where you are today. So Joe, let's start with you. Here's what I know. At some point you were a carpet cleaner. That was the thing. Yes. And you had a carpet cleaning business.
1990, back in the day.
Holy crap.
Some people may not even been born that are on this right now at that time, but yeah. Yeah.
So people hired you to come to their house and clean their carpets, that kind of thing. And at some point on that journey, you discovered what works on the marketing side or direct response. And my curiosity is, who was like the first mentor or person that you learned from way back then?
Well, and let me say this about Steve. I like the whole thing about super connector, because he used to be a model, but he's now a supermodel, because it just adds that whole other element to it. But where I had this entrepreneurial fantasy that I wanted to run my own business. Why? Because I don't think entrepreneurs are made. I think they're born. You sort of have it or you don't. And it's a type of risk-taking, visionary sort of endeavor. Most entrepreneurs, not all, but many, fall into the quick start, to use Kathy Kolbe's Kolbe index. Visionaries more than they are, detail people that like managing and stuff. But, all people are necessary. I've had the same assistant, Eunice Miller, for 27 years now. And people have always tried to steal her away from me, and have always said to her, why don't you go run a business, being around all these entrepreneurs all the time? And she's like, I don't want to run a business. I'm a backstage person. I'm not a front stage person. So, Steve is also, a guy that you're talking about, what he did, Bluefish. And he then became a speaker, and I would like to just take credit for that too, since I seem.
Of course you would, you fuck now. You'll take credit for anything.
No, I'm going to take it all right now. But he never gave a speech before. The first speech he ever gave was at Genius Network, and he was, actually pretty good. I mean, I hate
pretty damn impressive.
Pretty good. Now he's way better. I mean, everyone will see that. He'll hopefully be more entertaining than I will, and more valuable to today's, today's gifted show. But yeah, to answer your question, I was a dead broke carpet cleaner living off credit cards. I got into the business by accident. Many people get into their first businesses or their first careers by accident. They need money. And I, had a pretty crazy childhood. I won't go deeply into it. I mean, I spend half my time now helping entrepreneurs, and the other half, well, I should probably say about 10% of my life is skunk work projects, crazy stuff. I mean, I have a VR company. I bought a ghost town a few months ago with a couple of friends. I do crazy shit, but about half my time's in the entrepreneurial world, and the other half of it is helping people that struggle with addiction. So, I became a carpet cleaner, but a few years prior to that, my worst state, I weighed 105 pounds from freebasing cocaine for almost 3 months straight, and I was a total drug addict. And I nearly died. So I needed to, move out of Arizona, go live in a trailer for a couple of years with my father. I went to New Mexico State and just got sober and started going to meetings. And, that was a whole long journey. I, can get into that later if anyone wants to ask any questions about that. There's nothing off limits. Anyone can ask me anything. And I don't even know, do you do questions here? Or is it just the three of us? No.
Usually the three of us, but if I see stuff popping up in the chat, I'll bring it up too.
Okay, well, I was going to say the line because it's easier to find a new audience than the new joke, but it's, there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's just stupid people that ask questions. And so we'll let that person be Steve Sims today. But basically, so I had this carpet cleaning business, and I'm sitting there like struggling, trying to figure out and I knew nothing about what marketing was, how to do it. And so many other carpet cleaners were advertising really low prices, using high pressure sales. I got into the business because a friend I went to high school with, was working for a company, talked me into it. And here I was in this business. And you asked, who was my first mentor? So there's many ways to go broke. I mean, there's more intelligent ways to go broke, but one of the dumbest ways to go broke is doing hard manual labor, lugging a portable steam cleaner up 3-story, apartment complexes in the middle of summer in Arizona. And if any of you have ever been in Arizona in the middle of summer, it's pretty much like, it's like hell. I mean, it's hot. And I was doing hard manual labor, and I was paying money on credit card to do it, meaning I was losing money to be in business. And if you want to go broke, I mean, sit on a couch, eat potato chips, watch videos, whatever. There's just one of the dumbest ways to go broke is being a carpet cleaner and not making money. But I was insistent. I wanted to do it. And so I was, studying to go into another business. At night, I was taking these classes on how to get my Series 7 and Series 63 license to sell stocks, because I had another friend that went to high school that was doing pretty well. But it didn't resonate with me because there was a lot of high pressure and I didn't like that sort of environment. But I was like trying to figure out what the hell could I do other than this carpet cleaning business, because it was difficult. So a friend asked me to go jet skiing with him at Saguaro Lake, which was a lake out here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And when you don't have any money, you don't have, discretionary income to go and do stuff. And so I said, no, I'm busy. I can't do it. And he's like, well, the guy that owns the jet skis is this multi-million-dollar real estate investor. And it's probably going to be pretty cool. And that piqued my interest. I'm like, oh, maybe I can go talk to the rich guy, and he can, give me some advice. So I went out on this trip, and I finally had an opportunity to sit on the tailgate of this pickup truck with this guy that, owned the 2 jet skis. And it was me, my friend, Pat, and then this guy who I don't even remember his name, and then one of his friends. And my friend and this guy, the rich real estate investor's friend, were out on the, on the jet skis. And I said to him, so I hear you do really well in business. And, I have a carpet cleaning business here in Arizona, and I'm looking to get into another industry where I can, make more money. And he said to me, he goes, well, is there anyone in your business doing, well? And I said, yeah, there's, a couple of companies in Phoenix that, make over $1 million a year. And, at the time, that's a lot of money to me. And he said, well, if there's other people that are in your business doing well and you're not, there's nothing wrong with the business you're in. There's something wrong with you. And I was like, that's not the motivational speech I wanted to hear. So I said, no, I'm certified, I'm trained, I've been doing this for, going on a, couple of years. And, there's a lot of these companies have been established, but a lot of them do bait and switch advertising. And, and I don't want to do that sort of stuff. I'm certified and, and I know how to do a good job, but it's just a really tough business. And he said, well, young man, you're like most people. You think the grass is always greener on the other side. But what's going to happen if you go into another business is you're going to spend another 6 months, another year, another 2 years learning the technical skills of another industry, so you can go out and repeat the same bad business habits that have caused you to be failing in the business you're in. And I'm just like, what the hell? But for some reason, that was the best mentor and the right mentor at the right time, that I was just available to hear it. I mean, you have to avoid, and I see Kevin Thompson on the line, right? Kevin, like he became one of our carpet cleaning. He was the same thing. Kevin has his own version of the same damn story, broke carpet cleaner trying to figure out, what he did. He, bought my stuff, I think in 1997, and, it ended up becoming a very skilled marketer. And so, when I heard that from the guy, I was still reading books. I was still trying to figure it out. I was reading a lot of, personal development and self-help and all that. I've always been one of these, seekers and seminar junkies and people that are always trying to find an edge. And that usually comes from, traumatic childhood and all kinds of stuff, trying to, find your way. But I left that trip and I had this thought in my head saying, I live in America. I have a lot of personal problems. I have self-esteem issues, certainly, but I can work hard. And there's people that seem to be making money that, don't have very good ethics and, don't seem to work as hard as I do. They obviously know something that I don't in some areas. I need to figure that out. So I made a commitment to myself that I would not get out of that carpet cleaning business until I figured out how to make it work. And that set me on a path. I didn't know yet how to do any marketing. I didn't know where that was going to come from. That didn't even occur to me. But what ended up happening was I read a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, who I've known him for years. I mean, hell, I ended up, he needed help with something. He's in his 80s now, 85. And I spent, a few hours with him on the phone a couple months ago, helping him with something that he needs, so I've known Michael all these years, but he wrote this book. And one of the things he talked about were the entrepreneur, the technician, and the manager, and, systemize and automate your business. But it planted a seed that if there's any area of your business that you want to automate and systemize, it's the one area that's responsible for bringing in money. So if you're not making any money, how do you focus on creating that aspect of it? So then when a friend gave me a newsletter written by a guy named Gary Halbert, who was a crazy, insane copywriter, but a brilliant marketer, that was my first introduction to direct response marketing. And through Gary, I met Dan Kennedy. Dan's also a very smart marketer. I'll tell you though, Giovanni, and Steve, since you're here, and all of our guests, marketing is incredible. Marketing is the oxygen that allows your business to do well. I know some of the top marketers in the world. Many of them are friends of mine. I've interviewed over 1,000 people at this point. Blah blah blah. But there's a lot of con artists in the marketing world. There's a lot of people that sell shit. They hype people, and it attracts a very weird sort of personality. So I have a love-hate relationship with the people in that industry. They're very episodic. They're very trained to, look at your list as like just targets. And I mean, as Dan Sullivan said, our friend, money earned ethically is a byproduct of value creation. So even early on, I started using education-based marketing. I turned the small carpet cleaning business around once I learned that selling is what you do when you're on the phone or face-to-face with somebody, because there was no internet back then. I mean, this was back in 1992 when I first read my first Gary Halbert newsletter. I didn't even have my first website till 1996, because this was all a brand new thing. I mean, people weren't doing email marketing. There were no websites. There was no Google. There was none of that stuff. So we're doing, direct mail, and selling is what you do when you're on the phone or face-to-face with somebody. Marketing is what you do to get them on the phone or face-to-face with you. So by the time you're talking to them, they're pre-interested, pre-motivated, pre-qualified, and predisposed to give you money. So I built the largest training organization in the world for carpet and upholstery cleaners. I then licensed my marketing materials to home remodelers, heating, air conditioning, printing, painters, florists, jewelers, hair and nail salons. All these industries learned a tremendous amount about helping service businesses. and started doing coaching groups back in 1998. And I never did any general marketing stuff for the masses until 2004, when I did a program with a company called Nightingale Conant. And then then Genius Network became, a few years after that. So I've been in this game for a long time. And now my whole goal is to help build a better entrepreneur. Sometimes that's through marketing, but to the whole point of this conversation, and then I'll let Steve talk because I've been talking for too long here, is about building relationships. You can time is money, you'll hear people say. I've never, back in the day, hit an alarm clock, but now most people have their iPhones or whatever, that's their alarm clock. There's not a pile of money there when your alarm clock goes off in the morning. It's time is not money. Relationships are money. Relationships are health. Relationships are love. Relationships are significance. Relationships help you to heal when you're going through a world of suffering. And so it's the relationships, it's your ability to bond and connect. And the way to do that is to have the attitude of what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. And if you approach relationships with what do you want versus looking at what they want, you're going to have a completely different approach. People that walk around with an entitlement attitude, or people that are like, ask, because I tell people, it's like the Wayne Gretzky thing. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. All of us that are successful in any endeavor ask people for things. Everyone has a want. People showed up here today because they want to hopefully learn something. Like, why are we all talking to each other? I have wants, you have wants, everyone has wants. But when you show up with a want, is your give equal to your want or better than your want? And if you can make what it is you're requesting from someone else to show up with value that would make it exciting and reciprocal and honoring and respectful, because people just, hey, can I interview you for my podcast? Have you ever listened to him? No, I haven't listened to him yet. But it's like, why should I be talking to you? You've not even done any research. You're showing up with a want because you're thinking, because maybe you're a well-known person and that's going to do stuff for me. So believe me, I believe in generosity. I like the people that become my inner circle friends, or how are people that are more powerful treat people that are less powerful than them? Do they say thank you when someone opens a door? Are they respectful to servers? But I can't tell you how many famous people that have big influencers, thought leaders, and thought leaders, that's a nonsensical sort of thing. Any idiot can come up with a thought, but result leaders are what I really like. And I understand the term, so I'm not going to bash on thought leaders too much, because Steve is a thought leader. You will see that. But
I'm sorry, I was watching porn. I wasn't listening.
Of course, I know. I mean, I understand that. That's why I can say this stuff and not have to worry about you getting too offended because you're a bit distracted. But but the point is that, like, if you show up like genuinely concerned, not like with, Adam Grant is a friend of mine. He wrote a book called Give or Take. He talks about givers, takers, and matchers. And, matchers, it's like tit for tat, where you'll be nice, you'll do stuff for people, but there's an agenda behind it. And you can get what you want that way. There's a lot of takers in the world that make tons of money. I mean, believe me, there are. And there's a lot of egotistical, narcissistic influencers that the world admires. But, when you look underneath the surface, I'm impressed by people that have 5-year, 10-year, 20-year relationships. One thing I was saying in my 20s, because I read it, this quote, be nice to the people you meet on the way up. They're the same people you're going to meet on the way down. And I'm 54 years old today, and I guarantee you're going to run into people 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. And if you leave scorched earth and you're a piece of shit human, and when I say piece of shit human, most people that are hurting other people just have trauma in their lives. They haven't dealt with it yet. So they just kind of bulldoze their way through life. If you literally become genuinely caring, and every approach to someone is to leave them better off than they were before you showed up, even if that involves insulting your male friends and using crude humor, that's another way to actually seriously create value. And it's also kind of fun to banter. And we'll do that all day long. I mean, because, like we got Steve here, how the hell are we not going to do that? I mean, look at him. The guy's a pierced eyebrow. He looks like a freak show. But nonetheless, if you could at least be loving and caring towards people, even in the weirdest ways, you're going to develop a lot of relationships. And those relationships will make you money. Those relationships will give you access to all kinds of things. But the bigger thing is not looking for people that can be dominoes for you, but how can you be a domino for someone else? All of us had a first domino in our life. That guy at the jet telling me that, young man, if you don't figure out how to learn a business. And when he said that to me, I made a commitment that I'm not going to get out of this business till I figure out how to make it work. He was my first mentor. That was a domino effect for me, and it changed the whole trajectory of my life. And now, my goal is to hopefully be a domino for other people and share whatever insights or relationships or things I can to hopefully, reduce suffering and increase connection, because connection is what it's all about. All right, I'm done spewing my Steve, say something better than what I just said to that one. Who was your first mentor other than me? I mean, I would like to say, take all responsibility for your success.
I think my dog could say something better than what you've just rambled on about. But the funny thing that you say is, and I really don't want to give you credit. Trust me, I really don't want to. But Joe actually said to me years ago, it's aggravated oysters that make pearls. And the one thing that I know in a commonality through all of us is that we're all basically constantly on a point of aggravation, pissed off and just fucked off with things. And we go out to get over that. We find the solution, and then we provide that solution to other people in exchange for that credit card. So it's not hard. I remember growing up in East London as a bricklayer with no money. And so the first thing I wanted to do was go out, and just like Joe said, my mentor was a guy that I walked into a bar one day, and I was with a couple of biker friends of mine. And one of the guys turned around and went, that's someone's, and I can't even remember the guy's name, but he owned the local gas station and the local supermarket. So in our town, this was like Richard Branson, and he was in our bar, And so straight away, I thought, well, that's the richest guy in our neighborhood. I walked over and started having a conversation with him. And as I was talking to him, he was going to the bar to get a beer, and he went, oh, do you want a beer? And I went, yeah. So I was already up. I just got a free beer. And I said yes. And I turned around to my mates, and my mates were like glued to the wall on the other side of the bar. And I suddenly realized how different I was to them. Entrepreneurs, as Joe says, we're born aggravated, and we're searchers. I had just taken those few steps to talk to the guy, and I was already up profit, one beer. Those guys were petrified to talk to him and stood at the other end. Now, I spent the night talking to him. He didn't give me any more much wisdom that night, but I realized how different we were. And I went out on a journey to try and find rich people to quite simply ask, why are you successful and I'm not? Why are you rich and I'm not? Funny enough, I got a job as a stockbroker. They transferred me to Hong Kong. I lasted 24 hours, and I ended up working on a door where my job description was just to punch people. And I just thought this was the lowest ebb of my life. But as Sean Stevenson, again, someone that Joe introduced me to, said, was this done to me or was it done for me? And just that change of perspective, I then took that position to look at being a doorman as a pedestal to be able to look at human interaction. And I got to notice very quickly the fakes that pretended they were rich, the guys that had a couple of sherbets in them and were just looking for a punch-up that night, the girls that were looking for a free ride that night, the guys and girls that were celebrating a birthday or job. I got to notice that, and I got to mingle with the more affluent side of that. And I started getting them into parties, getting them back doors into bars, getting bars shut down so they could stay overnight. And I just took this as far as I could. And I went from closing down bars in Wan Chai, Hong Kong, to working with, the Grammys, Elton John's Oscar party, the New York Fashion Week, Kentucky Derby, Ferrari, blah, 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 loads of high-end events. In fact, there's not a VIP event from Macau to LA that I haven't had my fingers in. And it was all the same thing that Joe was saying, was to basically gain the knowledge that I could use. And I have a little game that I play within my events, which are far better than Joe's. And I call it the barbecue game. And Joe was saying it, but in a different context. He was saying about bring value. Him setting up that context means that my next game isn't going to work as well. But I'm urging you to try this with the people close to you. When you've got about 4 or 5 people around, say, hey, I want to play a game. I'm having a barbecue this Saturday night. You're in my area. What's the first question you ask me? And you'll get someone go, oh, okay. What time is it? Who's going to be there? What shall I wear? Can I take photographs? What food are you serving? Will there be alcohol? And then usually around about about 5 to maybe 8 of the questions, they'll turn around and they'll go, oh, what can I bring? Now, here's the funny thing. Ladies, 90% of the time, the first question they will ask is, what can I bring? The guys will ask, where is it? So basically, you've got 5 selfish questions before you get to one that helps you. In Joe's conversation, you should always look at how I can bring value to you before I bring my ask. Anything I've ever got, whether it be closing down museums, getting into the Vatican, working with Elton John, I've always turned up with, hey, I like what you do, but you know, if you just did these couple of steps, you could actually improve it. And everyone already knows you want something, but you've shown up with a solution to them. And for them to be able to get the magic keys to that solution, they then turn around and go, oh, but how can I help you? So always show up with some kind of value first. That was far short of and superior to what Joe went on with, but carry on, Gio.
Well, I want to give some detail of what I know you've created for people. And I'll start with me. Like in 2014, I said, I want to go to Italy, and your company took care of everything. And it was like the most epic trip. And then 2 years later, you called me saying, hey, Elton John is doing this private event in New York. Do you and Stephanie want to come as my guest? And that was one of the most memorable experiences, like being in Cipriani's in New York with, I don't know, 200-300 amazing humans and celebrities and important people from the city and all that kind of stuff. And you had a client who you arranged for them to get married at the Vatican, which I believe has never happened before. So you must be BFFs with the Pope now. And then you had another client.
Oh, me and him, you know, we're buddies. We wear the same dress size.
And then another client who said, I want to propose to my girlfriend in front of the Statue of David with Andrea Bocelli singing to us. And that's the kind of stuff you basically can have anything happen as long as someone's willing to invest whatever it takes.
Yeah, I did that for about 25 years. And then I just basically wrote a book, which, Bluefishing, which I didn't really think would take off. And it just did. So it's kind of set me into a whole new thing. And Joe was right. And again, I hate to admit that, but his was the first stage that I actually went on and just went, this is what I do. And then he introduced me to Joel Weldon and prodded me to use Joel Weldon to be my speaking coach. And I think the only point where you can ever call yourself dumb is when you're offered an opportunity and you ignore it. So the thing about Joe is he's got people around him, and you, Gio, where you've got people around you. The real spaz in the room is going to be the one that doesn't ask the other person and doesn't listen to them. So when Joe was like, look, you want to be better, Joel Weldon, I took Joel Weldon, and all of a sudden, every time I do a speech, I send it over to Joel. Joel rips it to shreds and enables me to be better on the next one. And I think that's the thing about relationships. Relationships aren't cheerleaders. Everyone loves cheerleaders. They look great in a short skirt, but they're of no fucking use to anybody. Challengers, those are the ones. When you turn around and you're in a great room and you say, hey, I want to look at doing this. And the person opposite you goes, is that it? Really? That's where you're pulling the ceiling and you go, actually, no, how far could I take this? The moon, let's go. That's what you need. You need to be in the right room where people don't laugh at your goals and aspirations. They're laughing at how low you're keeping them and then challenge you to push more. So relationships are everything. Joe will back me up on this. I have no talent for absolutely anything else in the planet other than being able to show up on your doorstep with the solution to your problem. And here's the beautiful thing. And again, me and Joe will support this. When you turn up as the solution to somebody else's problem, They actually don't care what your website looks like or how sexy you look, or are you leaning up against a car that you borrowed that day for your Instagram pictures. No one gives a fuck. If you are a solution to somebody else's problem, they want you, they need you, they will gravitate to you, they will share you. You're no visual, you're pure substance.
I have an amazing Joel Weldon story that is going to be useful for everybody here, because I now have a lot of people in my community talk about things like imposter syndrome. And I remember when I joined Genius Network in 2012. I think I was a member for 3 years before I actually said a fucking word, because of how much imposter syndrome I had.
Yeah.
And here's what actually happened. So one day we were at a meeting, there's probably 40 people in the room, and Joel Weldon was there. And it's usually a 2-day event that Joe does. At the end of day one, he said, "Hey, who wants to do a 10-minute talk tomorrow?" Because you allow people in the room to come up and give some value. And Neil Moore, who was in the room too, who's a good friend of all of ours, he puts up his hand and he says, "Joe, Giovanni wants to do a 10-minute talk tomorrow." I'm like, "You fucking asshole." Not that I was really nervous. It was just, I had nothing prepared. And to make it exponentially, infinitely worse, Joel Weldon, who's like one of the best speaker trainers in the world, was there. And Joe said, every time someone does a 10-minute talk, you're going to critique them. So the entire first day, some of the best speakers on the planet were speaking. And Joel had pages of notes of what they were messing up. So I'm like, great. So my first time speaking in front of this group, I have to figure out what the hell I'm going to say. And then this guy's going to critique me. The only thing that saved me was how much notes I was taking the first day of all the critiques. So I'm like, okay. So I spent the entire night preparing a talk for the next day using everything Joel said. And then I did my 10-minute talk. And I think, Joe, you told me I was the first person who got interrupted with a standing ovation in the middle of a 10-minute talk. And then I finished and Joel came up and I was like, "Oh shit." And he said, "Gio, I don't know how to tell you this. I have nothing to say to you." And it changed my whole life, because I thought, wait a minute, maybe I actually kind of belong in this room, and this whole imposter syndrome shit is bullshit. So I'm grateful for Joe, grateful for Neil for that experience. And my lesson for everyone is that if you're already in a room and you've been invited, you're supposed to be there, right? And if you feel that anxiety, that's you getting ready and up leveling for the next thing. And so thank you, Joe, for that. And Joe, I want to come back to something you said around, and Steve mentioned too, around giving first. And Joe, you're the first person who ever heard say life gives to the givers. And you mentioned Adam Grant, which that book is amazing. My challenge, and I think a challenge for a lot of people watching, is how do you be an amazing giver and not be taken advantage of? Like, how do you know how to be an effective giver?
Well, I can only speak for myself. The way that I think I have learned is I had to get taken advantage of a lot. I had to learn how to develop my spidey senses, because if you walk through the world as a giver, you are a magnet to takers, because takers look for givers, right? They don't want to give, they want to take. And so who do you take from? You take from people that are offering stuff. You take from people that are valuable. You take from people that are useful. And of course, in Adam's research, he found that the people that make the least amount of money are the givers. But then he also found the people that make the most amount of money are the givers. It depends on where they focus, what I call TAMI. The things that you can spend. TAMI stands for time, attention, money, effort, and energy. It's not spelled quite the same way, but that's what TAMI is, right? So you got your time, you got your attention, you got your money, you got your effort, you got your energy. And I just finished writing a book that comes out. Hay House is the publisher. It comes out in November, so no, I can't buy it yet. But it's called What's in It for Them. And the book, I had to do a really deep dive. Like last year, I took the entire year off as a sabbatical. My companies continued to run with my amazing team, and all my amazing Genius Network members actually ran Genius Network. It was pretty cool. I mean, it was a massive exercise in letting go. And I had a lot of time to think about this because also, you know, in 2020, in the middle of it, I had a friend that I've heard named Mark Schneider, who gave me the term ELF, easy, lucrative, fun. You can have an ELF business, easy, lucrative, fun, or you can have a half business, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. Sometimes hard, annoying, lucrative, and frustrating. And so when you're being a giver, you know, I try to look for ELF relationships. I try to give where I can actually really provide value. And I have made more money by giving more value in advance than I ever did trying to withhold things. And then, you know, I'm not going to, you know, like contacts, knowledge, it's not fine china. You know, if you give it away, it's not like you've lost it. Or, you know, now if you give proprietary secrets to different people that are going to steal it, that's just frankly going to happen. But, you know, sometimes you have to have your heart ripped out of your chest in order to really learn how to open your heart, you know, and that's a complex thing. So when I wrote this book, it was a bit of what I've done successfully and how I've developed relationships, because that's the number one thing people always ask me is, you know, how do you meet all these people, you know, and there's, you know, there's a lot of star fuckers in the world. I mean, they want to be around stars. They want to be around status. They want to be around famous people. But I have spent a lot of times in recovery, and I've been in very high profile groups where I've sat with people that are infinitely more wealthy than any of the self-help gurus that write books and stuff, billionaires, you know, NFL players, NBA players, clergy, politicians, you know, people that musicians. I mean, you know, I've sat with people that the world admires and seen them in their most broken state, struggling with addiction. And it kind of makes you realize that, you know, nobody's all that special. And I don't mean we're not all special and significant, because we actually are. There's very many special people in the world. But what I mean is from the standpoint of, if you think you're so important, if you think your status and, you know, and your ego is so big that you actually think you can look down on people, or that you have something, wait till you have a really hard moment in your life, wait till the world goes into a shitstorm. And so, you know, with this pandemic and with all the human suffering, and I mean, I have an amazing, blessed life. I'm not in the middle of a war-torn country right now. I mean, I do well, and just seeing, you know, the struggles and just saying, wow, you know, who shows up? I learned during the pandemic that, and during my sabbatical, that there's a lot less givers in the world than I once thought, but there's quite a few real warriors and people that showed up that I never would have imagined, and people that showed up in a different way. And we are in the middle of so much human pain and emotional struggle of what's, you know, happened over the last couple of years. But the thing as it relates to being a giver, I mean, I wrote a book called Life Gives to the Giver. That's the name of one of my books, and you can get it for free at joesfreebook.com. And it won't put you into a crazy upsell funnel where you have to buy shit. You can just download the book and not buy anything. You know, it's just a good book. And I do that because I don't want to, and it's a good, you know, and the key here is I would encourage everyone. You have some superpowers, you have some insights, some knowledge, some adversities that you've overcome, some strategies that you learned, and it could be personal, it could be professional. And there are many humans on the planet that would love to know, experience, and have access to what it is that you could simply share with them. And if you learn a few riffs of value that you can share with people, and you talk about it, and you just go through you will have some people that will take advantage. So what I would say is, don't just look for red flags. My buddy Patrick Gentempo, he's the one that really, you know, it's a simple term, but he made me think about this a lot. Yellow flags. You know, sometimes the most charming people are very manipulative. If you are finding yourself, you know, getting taken advantage of, you may want to look at who you're attracting and how you're approaching them and why. I mean, even in my book, What's in It for Them, I go through all kinds of ways to be valuable, but I also have a chapter on intimidation, where, you know, some people will use intimidation against you, and you have to be a person that's not a doormat. You want to develop boundaries on what, you know, I will literally help people and I will watch how they behave. if they can't even say thank you, and I don't go into these things with this expectation that, oh, they have to do this for me or I'm not going to be a giver. I always show up as a giver. I always show up being very courteous. But what I do is I'm very careful about throwing pearls before swine, because they will take them and they will steal them. And by being a giver, you not only will have people take advantage of you, you will have people betray you. You will have people that will try to fuck your life over. It just is part of the deal. But what's the alternative? Because if you're more selfish and you're more withholding, my experience and through witnessing, because I believe in karma, is that's not a good way to go through life. You're not putting deposits into people's karmic bank accounts by being a taker either. And so, it's a bit of, you learn by doing your reps. I have a good friend, Chris Voss. He's one of my Genius Network members. He wrote, the book Never Split the Difference. So he's the top, negotiation guy in the world. He's a former top international FBI hostage negotiator. And I've had numerous conversations with him, about, life is sort of in a negotiation. You don't get in life what's fair, you get what you negotiate. And I think one of the best ways to negotiate is just be so damn useful, so generous, so valuable that people just want what you have to offer, and you build a reputation that way. And then you don't have to constantly go out and, you don't need a publicist. Your publicists become all the humans that you've been really useful to that just say nice things about you. And, that's like, I love marketing, and I also wish we didn't have to do any of it. And sometimes the best marketing you'll ever do is just being freaking awesome. Like Dan Sullivan, since we're talking about, Dan, what's the referability habits? Show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, finish what you start, and say please or thank you. Part of being a giver is following those referability habits. And and learn about narcissism. If you're getting taken advantage of, I have a good friend, Dr. Ramani Devasala. She's one of the top narcissist experts in the world. She's actually Will Smith's therapist, and which is publicly known because she's gone on videos with him and stuff. But I got taken advantage of. One of the reasons I took a sabbatical is I had a person that I made millions of dollars. I introduced him to so many famous people, made him rich. And he stole a bunch of my IP and had no regard for it. And I realized that even I, with being the relationship guy, and many people around him couldn't sense that this guy was an absolute manipulative taker. But he also, I understand his childhood too. It doesn't make it right, doesn't give it an excuse, but it allows you to understand. So you're going to learn the most in your life from shit that doesn't work, not from things that does work. Don't expect it to be perfect. Don't keep it from withholding, giving your best out there. Just don't believe everything. Like Zig Ziglar had a famous saying, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want, And then my friend, Martin Howie, came to one of my Genius Network meetings one day, and he goes, you really actually have to question that statement, because you can help some people get what they want, and they won't do a damn thing for you, and they'll take advantage of you. And that's true also. But you can get almost anything you want in life if you help the right people. So like when I wrote What's in It for Them, my whole thing is not just how to win friends and influence people, it's how to win the right friends and influence the right people. And if you give your giving to people that really are generous and appreciative, it will come back. If you if you just do it to people that you loan them money, they don't pay you back. You help them with anything, they don't, doesn't mean you don't continue to help people. You just, they're kind of showing you how they value the relationship with you. And if they're not respecting you, and if they're not being helpful, move on. There's a lot of awesome people in the world. You don't need that shit.
I love that quote. And it sparked one of my other favorite quotes, which happened at that event you took me to in 2004, because you introduced me to Mark Victor Hansen, who's one of the guys who wrote the Chicken Book Soup series, and he was speaking at that event. And he said two things that blew my mind then. One, he said, I think it was, I've published 100 million books and I haven't written one word, which I thought was insanity.
Yeah.
But then he said, the more important thing, he said, to be rich, you must enrich. So if you want to be successful and wealthy and all the things, you must give first. And I wrote that. I still have my notebook from that event, by the way, from 2004, and I have that note. And Steve, you've said a lot of smart things. One of them being, don't change the way you treat people, change the people you treat. So what do you mean by that? And how do you, like, what is your philosophy around all of this in terms of your inner circle and the people you surround yourself with?
Well, and this will be a stretch, but there was a point in my time that I was a very aggressive prick. And if you crossed me, that was not good for your health. I was that young person. They always say, what would you like to speak to you? You know, when would you like to go back and speak to yourself as a young? I don't want to see that kid. I don't like him. He was a very frustrated, angry, conflicted young fella that wasn't directed well. And I was always scared of being mistreated and being disrespected. So I put this barrier up. So I never lived. It wasn't me. I was always constantly on the defensive. And then I realized that the people that were helping me quite often weren't asking for something else. The mentors I had were giving me this information, were helping me, were advising me, but there wasn't an invoice at the end of it. And I suddenly started realizing that people will give out, and it may not help them, but just like you, Gio, you'll take the information you've learned from people within your life and you'll help other people. And as Joe says, create a domino effect. And I thought, I want to live as me, not as that person. So I started giving out, and you do get screwed over and you do get ripped off. But whose life are you going to live? You know, are you going to just try and kind of get back at them and have them basically anger your life and create the bitterness? It's the old, what is it? I forget who said that, you know, revenge is like drinking the poison and hoping they die. You know, I remember hearing that one. I thought, I'm so kind of like pissed off because you ripped me off. I'm hurting my life even more. So I gave up on that. And like Joe says, you've got to be really careful. One of my good, I think, pivotal moments was actually in my darkest moment, which is uncanny how most of us learn the most from the shit that we're in rather than the success. But when I was a doorman thinking this is the worst part of my life. Now, Claire was in England, my wife, and you've all met Claire. Well, not all of you, but a few of you. She was in England. I had the job as the stockbroker. And for 6 months, every Tuesday, I would phone her from the local phone box, which would end up costing like $20 to actually phone her. And I told her everything was going well. The only time I've lied to her in my life was telling her that the stockbroking job was going well. That same job that I spent longer in the air than I actually was at the desk. You know, that's how stupid that was, because I was trying to find my way. But as a doorman, I started trying to notice people, and I realized something. If you control who comes through your front door, you remove 99% of the problems on the inside. I actually ended up becoming a very successful doorman because I was controlling so many of the people. The guys that came up with a couple of sherbets, I was like, hey, fellas, it's a bit quiet in there tonight. You know, come back tomorrow. You know, I'll buy you your first beer. And I'd fuck them off, you know, and I'd get them out of it. And so I was lowering the amount of aggravation going on in the clubs. The other clubs were taking me on as their head of security, and because I was fighting less. And that took me into my business as well. If I control the people that come into my coaching, if I control their speaking gigs I take, if I control the rooms I get in, I remove 99% of the aggravation. So if you do actually look at it like a doorman and go, okay, this person is asking for my help. Is it the kind of person that I want to help? And then give everything. Now, I know about Joe. I know about the prick he's talking about, but it doesn't lower him. It lowers the other person. And everyone in the planet knows this other fucktard did this to Joe and treats him accordingly. And he was one of my clients. And if he phoned me up now to say, hey, Steve, can you help me? Go fuck yourself, hang up, end the conversation. So trust me, it doesn't diminish what Joe stands for or his standards. It makes people want to gravitate more to that. And that's the other thing. Standards. Live by yours, not by other people. Have other people step up to yours.
You said there's no invoice, and I actually want to challenge you on this, and I'll explain what I mean. But with the context of when you have mentors or people who want to help you, and they're not asking for anything in return, and they're not asking, but they do receive something. And this was one of my, I think, most profound lessons, and I'll actually share a story of what I learned. So in 2014, we started our events, like the smaller mastermind ones. In 2016, I wanted to do a big event, like thousands of people. And I thought, to do this, I really need some well-known speakers to participate, to really launch it properly. So I had Gary Vee at the time, and I had Robin Sharma, but the person I really wanted the most was Seth Godin. And I didn't know Seth at all. He was almost like a role model mentor because of his books and his work. And I thought, how do I invite a guy? How do I cold reach out to someone who I know hates flying? He doesn't like planes. He would have to fly to Toronto from New York. And for him, it's people like him. It's not just about the money. I could have offered anything, but if he didn't want to do it, why would he come? So what would my pitch or invitation be to one of the best marketers on the planet? So this is what I said, and this is what worked. And this is why, looping back to Steve's story, I emailed him. The only thing I knew is that he checks his email, because he's insane. He checks anybody who emails him, he'll check all the emails. So I emailed him and said, Seth, I'm your biggest fan, and I'm sure you've heard that a million times. And I've read all your books, and I'm sure you've heard that a million times. But here's the thing you haven't heard a million times. I want to show you how I've used your work to build up what I've done to help a lot of people. And I literally made myself a case study for him. And I said, I read Permission Marketing, and here's how I used it. I read Purple Cow, and here's what we did. And all of that, and Tribes, to build my community. And all of that has led to me being in the space where I can produce this giant event to help a lot of entrepreneurs in my world. And it would mean the world to me if we can make this full circle and have you speak at the event that only exists because I've been your student. And his response was, how the hell do I say no to this? And the lesson for me was that every single human, and we've kind of talked about this today, every single human is on a path. They're on a journey for themselves. They have a bigger, better future that they want to get to. And in some way, they're stuck. And if you could figure out how to get them to their future faster, that is the most valuable thing. And then, you have to figure out what that is. And then for someone like Seth, who's super successful, well-known in our industry, what does Seth want? And what I realized what he wants is to know that his work mattered, that all the bullshit he's been through, all the money he's lost and made, and all the stupid stuff he's had to go through wasn't for nothing, that people are actually paying attention and doing something with it and actually impacting other people. And to me, Steve, when someone is helping you and not asking for anything, the fact, and this is for everybody here and everybody watching, the fact that you do something with it and then report back what happened to show the person that you actually listened and did something with it, to me is one of the most valuable gifts you can give someone. And I think that for all of us, it's not just about receiving or having someone gift you something. And that's why this is called the Gifted Show, because we all have a gift to share. But it's the next thing of actually doing something with what you've been given, or the advice or the connection or the whatever it is, and then reporting back to the person saying, hey, because of you, thanks to you, here's what happened, here's the result, here's the outcome. And
you've got a good angle there. You've got a good point. You've got to share it on. I occasionally get people contact me and they go, hey, I read your book, and I'll respond with, what did you do with it? And if they turn around, they go, well, I haven't really done, well, call me back when you have. Because I want people to actually do things with it. I actually, like Joe was saying, there's a lot of pain in this world. There's a lot of beauty in this world, but we're in a very painful period of it at the moment. And it's not right. And it's our job to repair it. And we've got to be bolshy enough to actually demand better of each other so that we can get out of it and create a world selfishly that I want to live in and what I want my kids to live in. And you talk about relationships, anything that needs to be done today, I don't care if it's open heart surgery or building a bridge, there's probably a YouTube video or an app for it, but there's not an app for creating a relationship or to be able to learn the art of communication. So I think today, in a world where we're scared to actually say something because of the gotcha society, oh my God, he said something appropriate. Fuck right, I probably did. But until you say something that's wrong, you can't be educated to make it right. And today, we're so scared of saying something that may actually alienate or upset somebody that we're choosing actually to not say anything. And if you look at some of the people on this, I know you, I know Joe, I know Kevin Thompson, we're all great communicators and we're not frightened to communicate. And today, too many people are. I was watching Friends the other day. There's no one in the planet that hasn't watched an episode of Friends. And I was watching it the other day where Joey had the man bag, okay, because he was going on a modeling shoot. Everyone see it. I see some smile. Do you know today they couldn't actually do that episode? You know, it was all going on about gay. And yeah, if you're going in for a gay, they couldn't do the amount of stuff that we couldn't do today that we actually still find funny that would be inappropriate today. So we avoid it. I think today what we got to do is focus on having more communication with each other.
Yeah. I'm curious, Joe. Well, first off, advice for everybody. Here's the thing not to do. If you genuinely want to help somebody else, and part of that is you want to connect with them, and you feel like, well, I should give to them first, which is the right thing to do. Don't ask them, what do you need right now? Because you're actually making them do the homework of like, how would they know how you can help them? It's actually a pain in the ass. So don't do that. It's more important to do the homework to figure out what, in my language, what their path is, what their future looks like, and where they're stuck, so that you can find ways of being of service or being valuable to get them to their future faster. My question for Joe is there a methodology around how to figure out what the person needs, like how to do that research or how to do that homework from your paradigm?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I agree with that point too. So if someone's like, how can I help you, but you don't even know them, then like, I get that all the time. And it's just like, you know, what I always say to people is, if you know anyone that's struggling with addiction, just go to my website, geniusrecovery.org. There's nothing for sale there. It's all free resources, and help someone if you happen to know anyone that's struggling with addiction, because I don't know what else to tell them. And I know on one hand, but they are putting work on you. And I do want to acknowledge Steve just said some great shit. I mean, he really said some really useful, valuable stuff. So I hope everyone took that to heart. And I'm only saying that to appear like I'm nice, but anyway, you know, Harvey McKay is a buddy of mine. He's now 88 years old. He's lives right down the street from me. He wrote a book called years ago. He's written many books, but called How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And he talks about, before the internet, McKay 66, it was like 66 questions that you would literally, you know, research and ask to find out and collect before there were computer databases. I mean, people were doing this stuff on paper and, you know, 3x5 cards and Rolodexes. Because now it's so freaking easy to find stuff about people with an internet search, right? I mean, you can just look at if they have a social media profile, which almost all humans do. You can find so much about them just by, you know, Googling their name and looking at stuff. So what's funny is we have more access to stuff, and people are less inclined to do the work than they ever have. Like, I cannot tell you how many people I'll tell my team, you know, call this person, and you know, they kind of get it now because I've had to be redundant about some of this. Oh yeah, did you reach out to that person? Yeah, I sent them an email. I said call them, you know, send them an email to let them know you're going to call them, text them to let them know you're going to call them, whatever social media platform you can. Tell me, have a fucking conversation. Like, and I have genius youth. So I have some young entrepreneurs that I work with, and there's one of them, I won't mention his name. He's actually a pretty famous dude. And he is so good. Like, he just smokes other young entrepreneurs because the guy just makes phone calls. And he's like, no one in my age category communicates on the phone. They don't even know how to talk to each other. Everything's emojis, everything's pictures, everything's memes, and it's like, we have lost the art of human communications, and it's continuing to do that with all, because now so much marketing is algorithms, so much of it is database stuff, but just a real human connection is so important. And so if you find a bit of information about somebody, which is easy to do, for me, I wish I could tell you, in my new book, I even say, as crazy as this will sound, you can automate the whole thing. Go look up McKay 66 online, read it, look at all of the things if you even captured 1/10 of, 1/10 of 10% of the stuff that he collected, you would have more information about people than most people do. And if you want to meet somebody, or there's, someone's a who, like Genius Network, my group, I was just saying this the other day at Strategic Coach, it's a who house. It's like, with the right who, and this all started with Dean Jackson, and Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan, who are all in Genius Network. This whole conversation of who, not how. If you don't know how to do something, someone else does. Do you want to learn how to do everything, or do you want to find the right who that brings the how with them? And so if you're trying to get to a who, the way you explain talking to Seth and literally positioning that and framing it that way, in a way to how could he say no, that was brilliant. Everyone could go back and reverse engineer what you just described. It's funny because I do that all the time. I've been doing that for years. I approach people, like if I read someone's book and it really impacted me, I approach them and I tell them, here's what your book did for me, and let me share it with you. Here's why I find it so valuable. And I'll tell you, anyone that's not a narcissist, that has the ability to have empathy, will not only, like, narcissists will love compliments because that's what they're looking for. They want attention, good or bad, right? But a real genuine human being loves, for one, acknowledgement. And if you're at the level where your fame and your ego is so big that if someone comes up to you and says something, sincere, I'm not talking about a kiss ass, like, stalker fan person. I'm talking about a real genuine human. You're going to like that. If that person also shows up and shows how the value that they're saying, not just I like you, but here's what your book, your thing, your product, your service, your insight did for me, that is a far deeper sort of compliment. When we teach people testimonials in marketing, there's attaboy testimonials. Like if I was giving you a testimonial about say you wrote a book on marketing, I could be like, Giovanni's book was really great and it was really inspiring. But if you wrote a book on marketing and I made $1 million from a strategy in there, and I made it, $1 million with it, that's a result-based thing. So you showed up with a result-based edification, not just I'm your biggest fan and I really like you. So one of the ways that I utilize, I don't want to use people, I want to utilize people. I don't want to get used, I want people to utilize me, right? And so, yeah, if there is an approach, it's I guess kind of McKay 66 put into modern forms of database would probably be one of the ways that I do it. I also want to mention this too before I forget. There is, in the nonprofit world, and me and Steve, we know Richard Branson quite well. I've interviewed Richard, hours and hours of interviews with Richard, because I've done 6-week-long trips to Necker Island where I used to take people, and then I turned those trips over to a guy named Yannick Silver who still runs them. And basically, I've been in the nonprofit world quite a bit. I've done stuff, and I can't stand a big portion of it because the nonprofit world is filled with good do-gooders that guilt good doers into giving them money because they themselves are incapable of producing stuff. So it attracts a lot of parasites that try to, hide behind the cosmetic veneering of so much stuff so they can be on red carpets taking pictures of celebrities and act like they give a shit about the causes that they're supposedly trying to support. And I say all that where there's a lot of really great, wonderful people in the nonprofit world that are doing God's work, that are doing amazing things. So please take all this in context. There's guilt terms that are used though, like give back. I want to give back. I don't like that term. And the reason I don't like that term is because if I took your shoes, I should give them back. If I took something from you, I should give it back. But if I haven't taken anything, There's nothing to give back. And if you're creating value in the world and you're providing jobs and you're doing good stuff, you're already I'm all for giving. I just don't like the giving back shit. Because, and I understand the semantics, and there's a lot of people that, like, you know, they feel grateful, they feel blessed, they feel that people have done things and they want to give that. What I don't like is when people use the terminology to guilt people into thinking like, I mean, there's a lot of people that say, I want to give back, and they're trying to sell you shit in a really sneaky way, and they don't give a rat's ass about you. And there's a lot of nonprofits that try to act like they're doing good in the world, but they're just veneering. It's just cosmetic. It's just a show. And so as you go into the world with your giving nature and showing up, really look at the motive and the agenda behind it. You know, that saying, people judge themselves by their intentions, they judge others by their actions. You know, I have a friend named Chris Widener, and we're at a Harvey McKay small gathering he was doing a few years ago. And he said to everyone, he goes, you know, how many of you here have been screwed by somebody? And about half the people raised their hands. You know, like, how many of you, and he said, how many of you have screwed someone over? No one raised their hands. He's like, huh, that's interesting. You've all been screwed by someone, but none of you have ever screwed anyone. And he goes, you know why that is because you judge yourself on your intentions, you judge others by their actions. And it takes a really aware person. And I say this not like, please don't take anything I'm saying like I somehow have my shit together. I'm a flawed human, right? So I'm constantly trying to check myself before I wreck myself. It takes a level of awareness to realize that what you think you're intending or what you're going to do for someone is not how it's showing up for them. Everyone thinks they're right. Even the biggest con artists actually have a justification and a rationalization for what they're doing. They think they're right. So you have to deal with people at the level at which they respond. And different people respond in different ways and respond to different stuff. I mean, even Gary Chapman, who wrote the 5 Love Languages, you know, I was talking to him years ago, and he said to me that if you want to know what someone's love language is, listen to what they complain about. Because you can find out. So what I look for, Giovanni, more than anything, and I think Steve does it too. You know, he uses a lot of humor. And Steve knows how to position stuff. He's been around enough celebrities. There's certain shit where it's a show. I mean, it's theater. It's, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of different levels of how you're going to attract people. He knows that all kinds of people are going to want to go to an Oscar party and get on a jet. I mean, Steve knows how to play the status game. He knows how to do all that stuff. He just has a very unique, really awesome way of doing it. But you know, I was going to say a point, and then I started talking about Steve, and it slipped my mind.
No, that's fine. You can keep going. You've gone on for way too long.
That's the worst thing when you're trying to you say good things about Steve. You have a really significant thing to share, and it just gets deleted from your brain. Steve, were you paying attention? What did I say right before?
I really couldn't. I'm still trying to download porn. You know, the longer you talk, the more I get.
Steve, you know that I openly talk about sexual addiction, right? And you know that porn is a very toxic thing, and I don't think you should even use it in humor. I mean, because I think
but you also talk about alcoholism as well. And so, you know, I'm basically all kinds of fucked up as far as your scale goes.
I'm glad now you brought me back to what I was talking about. Okay.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. I look for human suffering, the pain that people have. And here's the thing, there is a lot of beauty in the world. I'm an optimistic pessimist. I'm not so idealistic that I think everything's freaking great, but I also want to encourage and inspire people, and I look for the good and stuff, but I also look for the pain and things. So like I just said, sex addiction, right? So I was raped and molested as a kid, and I was paid money not to say anything about it. And it was really dark, and it was really challenging. And that manifested later in life through sexual addiction, where I became a millionaire before the age of 30. And if you give a young person with addictive behaviors money, you can buy almost anything that your mind can come up with, right? And so I lived in a lot of shame, and I lived in a lot of guilt, and I would pay for sex. I would hire escorts. After doing events, it's like Janis Joplin, the singer who died of a drug overdose, said I would go and make love to 20,000 people and then go back to my hotel room alone. And I carried that shame with me a lot. And then in 2015, I was doing one of my events. I had John Mackey there, who was the founder of Whole Foods, all these very successful people in the audience. And I got up on stage and I talked about being a drug addict. and all the crazy stuff, but I also talked about the sexual addiction. I never had spoken about that publicly before. And I really did a setup of can I disclose this? Can I do it in a healthy way? And I very much advise people about doing Facebook confessionals and stuff about their life until they've done either some deep therapy or they have some good support around them, because that could be real dangerous. And I talked about it, and it just opened up. Like, I had so many men and women, a couple of very successful women that came up to me, and one of them said, yeah, I used to be a prostitute, you know, and people just started sharing stuff. And I realized, wow, it actually helps to talk about that, with the caveat that don't get wrapped up in woundology, because there's a lot of people that wear their trauma like a badge and it becomes their whole identity. And there's a whole danger in that side of it too. But I want to mention intimacy, because when you're talking about relationships and you're talking about connecting, it really is about connection. There was an 80-year-old gay man years ago that spends his life helping people that struggle from sexual addiction. And sexual addiction is an intimacy disorder. Like all addictions, there's binging and there's purging. So it's either excess or deprivation. And he said this line, and I hope this line is significant for some people. Intimacy is a mutual exploration of a shared safe place. Abuse is anything that takes away the safe place, and addictions are what we do to make ourselves feel good when we don't have a safe place. And when people don't feel safe in the world, they will do maladaptive ways to try to feel safe. And some of the most hardcore, I mean, I have sat with MMA fighters that can beat the living shit. And by the way, Steve actually he's a fighter. He's a tough dude, right? Physically, not just mentally, but he's a physically tough dude. I have sat with people that could kill someone, like literally physically, and I've seen them in a puddle of mud because they have the physical ability to go out and kick ass and take names, but emotionally they had so much, they just didn't feel safe in the world. And a lot of them became these strong, individuals because of that. And so all human beings, no matter how successful, how rich, how accomplished, there's some area of their life where there's some level of pain. And if you can bring a solution to that pain or some joy to their life, or you can help alleviate some of it, that's a good way to do it. So it's not just all the things that people are going to benefit from. It's all the things that you can help take pain and angst out of their life. So I've become a pain detective. I try to look where someone has pain, and do I have a contact, a book, a video, a person, a source that can help that. And I'll tell you, many of my relationships did not start from pleasure and inspiration. They started from desperation and people that were in angst. And I happened to show up and be the guy that could maybe link them with something. But I have a baton here. I just happen to have these things. You can't let me, yeah, so you can see the baton here. I pass the baton. It's not just me. Any problem in the world can be solved with the right genius network. So, part of it is I'm a baton passer. I can only do certain things, but I know I've developed a network of people that can help people finish races. I just want to help people be on the right race, because you never win a race that you don't want to be in. In some games in life, the only way you win is you don't play. And that means certain relationships, you're never going to have a good business with a bad partner. You're never going to have a good relationship with a bad partner. So part of this is selecting the right people. And anyway, so that's a whole bunch more that I just spun off with that. But I just wanted to give someone the insight that if you can really become more compassionate and more empathetic to people's pain, and you become the person that can alleviate or at least assist in that, it opens up a whole another level of not just opportunity, but I would like to think human betterment.
Profound. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank God that's over. All right.
So Joe's right. Go back to your porn, Steve. Come on.
Yeah. Joe's right. We've got all the answers here, but we choose to find a course that we can spend $99 on to outsource someone else to do it. If you're going to meet someone, then just Google them, look up images. And if you see a bunch of images where they're looking after, shelter dogs, then offer to help them with that. If they're releasing a book, tell them people that are doing podcasts to increase that distribution. This shit ain't hard. You've got more information in your hand than NASA had in the 80s and 90s. Just do the work.
There's one thing you share with me, Steve, at my very first event in LA in 2014. which was the thing so whenever you travel to a different hotel, and I don't know if this is a thing you still do, but I love it, around asking the hotel for stationery or
all the time.
All
the time. I don't even do much of the concierge stuff now, but I do that exact same thing. So any of you, you're interested in someone else. Well, most of you are, some of you aren't, but most of you are. So whenever you travel, go to the concierge or the front desk, or even I'm in New York next week. And I've already said, hey, I'm going to be sending out some letters to people. I need to make sure in my room is 100 envelopes and 100 pieces of stationery. And if it's not stationery, maybe you've got a postcard. Now, the hotels love, I don't know if they do this in Motel 6, but most hotels really love you doing this to expand the fact that it's an endorsement, all right? So I get the stationery, and then what I do is I bring it home, and I've got kids, and I like a couple of them, and I give them a list of all of my clients, and I go, right, this is what I want you to write. And it could be something as simple as, hey, I've been spending a few days in New York, and I just wanted you to know that I was thinking of you. All the best, Steve. Send me a text when you get the chance for us to talk. Just something like that. And then I put it in, and all it's cost me is a stamp. But you think about it. Every day in your mailbox, it's either tumbleweed, there's nothing in there, or it's telling you about the new Chinese restaurant or a new laundromat that's opened up. And then every now and then you'll get an envelope that's handwritten up front from a hotel in Portugal or New York or Toronto. And you're like, who's this? And I've got your engagement. And that's all we're after today, isn't it? The whole thing we need today is engagement, whether we're doing it marketing, whether we're doing Facebook ads, whether we're doing these Zoom calls, it's engagement. Now I've got both of your hands looking at an envelope going, I wonder what the expectation, the feel, the sound of the rip. I'm getting all of your senses. And then there's a stupid ass letter in there saying I was thinking of you. Now I've sent my bar tabs to people. I've literally sent the bar tab and just on the back of it gone, I had 3 whiskeys, 2 of them I was thinking of you, text me. And I've just put it, it's stupid shit. And behind this cabinet here, I've got envelopes that I literally just build up from all over the place and I just send them out. It's cheap, but it's engaging. And I do that all the time.
Brilliant. And I've received one of them. So thank you for that.
There you go.
Before we end, Joe, you've talked about addiction a lot. One of my favorite TED Talks ever, and I may butcher his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Johann Hari.
Johann Hari.
Yeah. Who says that addiction is the opposite of connection.
Yeah.
Which, and basically I think the TED Talk is called Everything We Know About Addiction is Wrong. And
that's the name of it. Yeah. He wrote the book Chasing the Scream in 2013. I actually gave the book to Jeff Hayes, and Jeff Hayes just completed a whole video series on with Johann on that topic. So it's
so I believe that part of connection is community, and what all 3 of us are great at now is building community. So what is your advice to people around building community?
Well,
hang on one second, Joe. I'm going to go first because really I can't wait for you to keep going. But I'm going to go first because then I've also got to bail because I've got an 11:30. Joe shows up as Joe. Gio shows up as Gio. I show up as me. There are far too many people out there trying to show up as somebody else to capture people that they really shouldn't be connecting with. So dare to show up as you, and you will be a magnet to those people you relate to. I can guarantee you on the 84 people that are here, there's probably a high percentage of people that absolutely love Joe and everything he's saying. And there's probably a proportion that may even have left that just don't like him. Okay? Joe's made that choice easy by not being somebody that he's not. Okay? So a community first starts by you daring to be you, putting your heart on your sleeve, daring to share, daring to give out, and daring to stand up. So there you go. I think that's basically it.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me say the thing before Steve asks to bail, then we'll get to the good stuff. You can judge the value of most relationships by how often they laugh together. If you see like a couple eating dinner and they're just staring at their phones and they're kind of miserable, I mean, there's probably not a lot of joy and not a lot of humor. And for the painful parts of life and for the parts of, even though I reference suffering, on the other side, I spend as much of my day as I can trying to find humor in the insanity of it all. And we're in the middle of a war. And what a war is organized murder. And there's a lot of organized murder coming, that has been here for a couple of years now, from pharmaceutical companies to tech companies to political, I can go on and on, but then I'll sound like a conspiracy theorist. But the fact is, if you can bring joy to a lot of the suffering, that's important. And when it comes to community, hang out with people that are interested in what you're hanging out with. You can't turn ducks into eagles. And if you want to, fly with eagles, you got to find metaphorically eagles, right? And if you want an 8, 9, or 10 life, you can't hang out with 1, 2s, or 3s, or 4, 5, and 6. You got to hang out with 8, 9s, and 10s. And so to go back with what Steve said, having standards. And, being an entrepreneur can be an extremely lonely business. The best thing about being an entrepreneur is you're your own boss. The worst thing about being an entrepreneur is you're your own boss. And so we need a sounding board. I always call it a genius network. Even though I have a company called Genius Network, everyone, Archangel, could be a genius network. And what that means to me is people that have skills and capabilities and connections, and you network together. It's a different form of networking. Just going out and like meeting people is one thing, but when you can, in order to have a genius network, you got to do genius networking, and you have to be a genius networker, which means you actually have to show up to the party with, going back earlier, what can I bring? And if you bring it to the community, the best way to get anything out of any community is show up and offer the best you can to everyone there, and you will be known as someone that's really useful. And we all want to hang out with people that are useful, people that are funny. And when you look at your phone and someone actually calls you or texts you and you get like a feeling of joy, I want you to think, why am I excited energetically by this call? And I will immediately take a call from some people, and other people you just hit, send a voicemail, because you don't want to talk to them. So what is it? And it could be a family member, right? It could be a lot of things. So start looking at, and then build your community around your values, around your principles, around what matters to you. And if you're into like crazy fucking weird shit, you're not going to be having fun with someone that's into shit that you're not into. So if you're into crazy adrenaline sports, you're going to build a community around that. But I would just suggest that there's a lot of lonely people in the world. There's a lot of people that are hurting. And one of the best ways to feel good is to go help someone who's in a position where they need help, and I'll tell you, that's why 12 steps. And that's why groups would, even going back to Vietnam vets, they were finding that when they would take Vietnam vets and have just therapists, some weren't getting better. But when they put them in a room with other vets that had mutual suffering, there was an instant rapport that could not be built in any other way, because those people were in the trenches. So get in the trenches with people, be helpful to them, and be known as a person that does that stuff. And not only are you going to develop more relationships and friends, you're actually going to make more money. You're going to, and if it's not a money thing, it could be, you get in better physical shape. If you want to be in better physical shape, hang out with people that are in really good physical shape, and cut all top. My friend Dave Kekich spent half his life in a wheelchair. Kekich credos, he said, cut all ties with dishonest, negative, and lazy people. If you just get all if you get the halves out of your life, you'll have time for all the elves, the easy, lucrative, and fun people, if you get rid of the hard, annoying, lame, and frustrated people. And that's would be my suggestions. And read Steve's book, Blue Fishing. It's a fucking great book. He goes into stuff. Obviously, anyone that's in this community, there you go. Anyone that's in this community, just go deeper with it. People go so shallow with things. They just go very shallow. And then, and they go to the next event, the next guru, the next this, the next that. You're better off reading one book 50 times that's really good and mastering it than you are reading in a very shallow way, 50 different books, or listening to 20 podcasts on 2 times speed so you can feel like you've accomplished something by, sometimes you just need to meditate and do yoga and breathe and not consume more shit. And there's my book, The Average Joe's Marketing Book, which, thank you. That one's not even publicly released yet, but yeah.
And that's Joe and Steve, thank you so much I know Steve's got to run. Thank you so much for.
I've actually got a bail for a podcast, but Gio, thank you very much for doing this. And Joe, okay. Right.
I
So
love
thank you very much.
I know you're trying to say I love you, so I'll say it first. So I love you. Go do good in the world. Try to be a decent human. Okay. Please.
All right. See you later, folks. Bye.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. See you all very soon.
Awesome, guys. Peace out.
Bye-bye.
Now you know why relationships matter. It's time to recalibrate your sights. What you are yet to understand is that your gift is a work of art. I'm here to tell you that you, my hero friend, may need to reframe yours in order to grow. See you next time, as our next set of guides will show you how to paint your masterpiece.